The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel recently debuted its marvelous second season on Amazon. The show is known for its rapid-fire quips and outstanding ensemble cast, but one thing you might not actually pay attention to, its cinematography. Cinematographers determine how a scene is shot and how it's lit. The second season of Mrs. Maisel starts with this long, winding shot through a switchboard room. We got a behind-the-scenes look at how the Maisel team pulled off this dizzying shot. First of all, we should talk about long takes. An early example comes from Orson Welles' Touch of Evil in 1958. The film's opening shot goes uninterrupted for about 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men involves multiple breathtaking one-shot action scenes. Then, in 2014, Alejandro González Iñárritu made the entirety of Birdman look like one long shot. The one from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel comes at the opening of Season 2. The scene is set at the fictitious department store where Midge Maisel, played by Rachel Brosnahan, works.
I think in general we don't do a lot of cutting on this show, and there's a lot of one-take scenes, dialogue scenes, so it's part of our language for the show in general.
That's M. David Mullen. He's the show's director of photography. Pulling off something like this naturally involves a lot of planning beforehand. They discussed this one single shot for about 3 or 4 weeks before actually filming it. Mullen had to figure out what kind of camera to use, if he needed any special lenses, and if he was going to actually have to put a camera inside a mail slot. A CGI shot of the piece of mail falling through the slot helped them more easily capture the shot, while still giving the look of a continuous take. The next part was all real. The team waited for their cue to enter, trailing the mailman at the exact moment he walked into the switchboard room. While they originally considered using a more complicated cable system, they settled on Steadicams. This allowed them to tilt the camera, first from above the cart, and then behind the mailman into the room, while the camera remained relatively still. Things got even tougher once they actually entered the switchboard room. While cameras can move fast, Mullen says every shot is limited by the speed of the human behind them. Plus, they were working in a tight space that had to fit 12 actors, at least 2 crew members, and all the equipment.
And we turned into the room, and this was the part where we had to decide whether to go on the outside or the inside of this row.
They went with the more difficult choice, inside the row. The space was so tight that the actresses had to move their heads back so they wouldn't get hit in the face. At the same time, the camera couldn't capture that they were leaning back.
So it was just a matter of timing. Just as we're passing their nose, essentially, they could start to lean out of the way.
Once there, the camera ends up focused fully on Midge, except she doesn't just sit still. She has to launch across the room in a rolling chair to take the call. The camera crew had to follow her there, a space Mullen approximates to be about 5 feet across. While circling around Midge, the camera sometimes would have to end up in a place where one of the women was sitting in order to properly capture the shot. So if they wrapped around her, that actor would be blocking the shot. That meant the extras constantly had to scramble around as the camera went diagonally across the room, so we would always see them in the right position. This is somewhat visible in the final scene, but at times, Brosnahan's scene partners had to physically push her around so she ended up in the right spot. Nailing this involved a lot of rehearsing and teamwork between the actors and the camera crew. There were some physical barriers, such as a file cabinet right here, and a wall right here. It left them with very little room to circle around. As you can see here, the camera just makes it past all their heads. The shot ends once Midge finishes the call. She turns around to the group, and the camera immediately cuts to a reverse angle. Then the camera goes back out the room and down the hall. For those of you at home timing it, about 1 minute and 17 seconds passes between the letter making it down the mail slot and Midge turning to the group. The shot proved to be a perfect entry back into the show's whimsical world. The idea to shoot the scene this way came from Maisel creator Amy Sherman-Palladino, who also directed this episode.
A lot of these super complicated shots are all in her imagination. She's formerly a dancer, and she loves movements with extras in the camera that feel like a dance number. So she imagined this switchboard scene, which, as you can imagine, people sitting at a console would not lend itself to much movement, but she wanted Midge to sort of slide quickly back and forth in a rolling chair and the camera to keep up with her, and the camera to be able to move among these women and these cables and these hand-switching switches.
While comedy is a genre that people don't always think about when they consider technical innovation, there's no way you can look away from the dazzling visuals of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.